Nell Hunty.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Tēnā koutou te wharenui. I've been in this House for nearly 7 years and I thought I was pretty cynical and looked at legislation and I thought it's usually, might be misguided, but it's got some understandable merit. And then we get to this bill. This is extraordinarily mean-spirited. It's extraordinarily bizarre, and it's so arcane that the people who have actually suffered from being underpaid by the system are not underpaid, my colleague says quite right, well, not receiving their full entitlement. No, yeah, it sounds like it's not receiving their full entitlement to me if they don't get a day's pay they're entitled to. They are going to have enough trouble understanding it, let alone applying for it. So I think that we need to look very hard at ourselves tonight and say, what are we doing in this House? Urgency, to fix urgency. So first of all, Mr Chair, I'd like to talk about why we don't support urgency for this kind of thing, because look at the mess. There was a drafting error, supposedly, and the courts have ruled clearly that the spirit of this isn't just a spirit, it's actually in the law already, that when you are going back after a stand down, you get the money the day that the stand down finishes. This isn't rocket science, and thank goodness, because I'm not a rocket scientist. It's pretty clear. But what about the people at the receiving end? It's fantastic for people to spend time having arcane debates on the clauses, but what about the people, the 70 people who contacted Jan Logie today, let alone any other person in this House, about are they going to be able to get their just entitlement? And the reason I'm fired up about this is, as someone who's been a beneficiary advocate on the East Coast, is that if a beneficiary dared to miss an appointment, if a beneficiary dared to supposedly do something wrong with their paperwork, you watch the benefit, sorry Mr Chair, let's watch the benefit fraud unit descend on them. I have sat in meetings with the benefit fraud unit, I have seen what they do. If anyone makes a mistake who's on a benefit, it's a ton of bricks time. And then, in the last couple of years, it's sanctions. It's cutting money from people. Today on Lambton Key, I talked to a beggar. She gets $13 a week from work and income. She's a mental health survivor who cannot get the invalid's benefit. And this is the kind of system that creates this kind of mess. And then when we make a mess, the willingness is not there to clean it up so that people can get what's fair. How can we hold our heads up in this House and do this kind of stuff to people who are at the bottom of the heap, many for no fault of their own? And then when the government makes a mistake, they won't fix it fairly. It's pretty basic. Fix it fairly, Mr Chair. Don't be mean. Do what's right. Actually, it's pretty basic. Yeah, be fair and don't be mean. It's not very sophisticated language. But after all, this is about natural justice. Is it not about natural justice? If we make mistakes, we have to own them. This bill, at the moment, doesn't own what it's created. So people are going to be knocked out of being able to apply for what's fair. They're going to be knocked out because they were on the benefit before May. And if you're after, you're in, but if you're before, you're out. And if anybody here knows anything about what it's like to live at the tough end of society, the person is on the benefit, then they get some work. The person gets some work and then they lose their job. The person gets stood down. The person then applies for a number of jobs. The person might get some part-time contract work. The person loses that work. The person then tries to go back on the benefit. The person is constantly on and off. And this isn't new. This hasn't just happened since May 2014. This has been happening to people for, well, I'd like to say since 1984 actually, but that's going back a rather long way. but the benefit system is not treating people the way it expects beneficiaries to behave.